Get out. You don't belong here. The words sliced through the chatter of Maple Ridge Diner like a knife. A heavy fist followed, cracking against the jaw of 72-year-old Elias Carter, an elderly black veteran who had come for nothing more than his morning coffee. His body lurched backward, the impact sending his mug shattering to the floor and his coins rolling across the tiles like scattered memories. The man who'd struck him, Darren Cole, stood tall and sneering. His voice dripped with arrogance. "Know your place, old man." The room froze. Forks hovered midair. Phones came out. The small-town silence thickened into shame. The cameras began rolling, recording what everyone thought was just another viral act of hate, a powerless senior being humiliated by a loudmouth bully. But Darren had made a fatal mistake. Hidden beneath Elias's worn gray cardigan was a purple heart medal, and in his phone was a single contact labeled Jordan, Homeland Security. Maria Lopez, the waitress who'd served him for years, knew exactly who that contact was. She whispered under her breath, "That fool has no idea." Elias lifted his phone, steady hands defying his age. His training as a former Air Force officer never left him. Within seconds, he was one call away from changing Darren's life forever. 30 minutes earlier, nothing about that morning hinted at chaos. Maple Ridge Diner smelled of bacon grease and fresh coffee. The neon "open" sign flickered lazily as farmers swapped weather updates and truckers joked about potholes. The town of Havenbrook, population just under 4,000, was the kind of place where people still nodded good morning to strangers. Every Tuesday at exactly 7:30 a.m., Elias Carter entered through the front door, his quiet steps as predictable as sunrise. Black coffee, wheat toast, exact change. Routine was his comfort. His cardigan was old, but pressed clean. His shoes shined like duty still mattered. "Morning, Mr. Carter," Maria greeted warmly, pouring his coffee before he could even ask. "The usual?" He smiled faintly. "Thanks, Maria. You always remember." What no one noticed was how he always sat facing the door, or how his eyes scanned every exit, or how the flag pin on his collar was always polished, always straight. His phone buzzed. A message from his son. "Big meeting with the cabinet today. Love you, Dad." Elias smiled, typing slowly with one finger. "Proud of you, son. Stay safe." Across the diner, Darren Cole slouched in a corner booth. His construction uniform was spotless this early, but the same couldn't be said for his mind. The man carried an anger that didn't need a reason, just a target. He eyed Elias with barely disguised disgust. "Don't know why they let anyone walk in here anymore," he muttered loud enough for others to hear. A few patrons shifted uneasily but stayed silent. That's what they always did. No one wanted trouble with Darren, the loudmouth who drank too much, tipped too well, and worked for people who mattered. Maria's jaw tightened as she poured another coffee. She'd seen this pattern before. The whispers, the smirks, the growing boldness. Outside the window, a college student named Noah Jennings adjusted his camera on a tripod. He was filming small-town life for a journalism project, the heart of rural America. He had no idea his footage would soon make national headlines. At 7:47 a.m., the diner was half full. Elias stirred his coffee slowly, savoring the warmth. He'd survived wars, outlived friends, and buried a wife. But somehow, this small-town peace felt sacred. And then Darren stood. The sound of his boots echoed like a warning as he crossed the room. The hum of conversation died mid-sentence. Every eye followed. "Morning," Elias greeted softly. Darren's smirk deepened. "You seem real comfortable here, old man. Real comfortable for someone who doesn't belong." Maria froze. Mrs. Davenport, the mayor's wife, looked up from her paper. The fire chief tensed. "I'm just having coffee," Elias replied evenly. "That's the problem," Darren shot back. "Your being here bothers people." The room held its breath. Elias straightened slightly. "I'm not bothering anyone." Darren leaned closer, his breath thick with intimidation. "You bother me." Outside, Noah's camera kept rolling, capturing every word through the diner's window. Inside, Maria lifted her phone and hit record. Elias reached for his wallet, trying to pay and leave, but Darren's hand slammed onto the table, scattering quarters and spilling coffee. "Don't walk away when I'm talking to you. Please," Elias said softly. "I don't want trouble." "Trouble?" Darren barked, laughter cold and sharp. "You are trouble, acting like you belong here." Maria's heart pounded. She'd seen fights break out before, but never this kind. Never with that kind of hate in the air. Fire Chief Morales stood halfway up. "That's enough, Darren." "Sit down," Darren snapped. "Unless you want to make this your problem, too." The silence that followed felt like a held breath the town had been keeping for years. Elias rose slowly. His posture changed, shoulders back, chin lifted. There was something regal about him now, something that made Darren instinctively step back. "I'm leaving," Elias said quietly. But Darren wasn't ready to let go of his stage. He shifted sideways, blocking the path. "You'll leave when I say you can." The shove came fast, hard enough to make Elias stumble against the table. Porcelain shattered. Gasps filled the diner. "Stop!" Maria cried. The second came, a brutal slap that cracked through the room like a gunshot. Elias's head turned sharply, his cheek burning red beneath the glint of his flag pin. For one breathless second, no one moved. Then everything erupted. Maria's scream, Mrs. Davenport's sob, the fire chief lunging forward. Elias touched his face, then slowly looked up. The rage in the room belonged to everyone except him. "You just made a serious mistake," he said quietly. Darren laughed. "Yeah? What are you going to do, call your mommy?" "No," Elias replied, pulling out his phone. "My son." Outside, Noah's camera zoomed in as Elias scrolled to his first contact. Jordan Carter, Director, Homeland Security. The crowd didn't breathe. "Go ahead," Darren scoffed. "Call whoever you want." The phone rang once, twice. Then a calm, authoritative voice answered. "Dad, are you okay?" The entire diner fell silent. Darren's smirk faltered. Elias spoke clearly into the phone. "I'm fine, son, but there's been an incident." "Where are you?" the voice demanded. "I'll have agents there in 20 minutes. The silence in Maple Ridge Diner turned into collective disbelief. Everyone heard it. Everyone saw Darren's face drain of color. "Agents?" he whispered. "Yes," Elias said softly. "And they'll want the footage." The cameras kept rolling. Justice had just entered the chat. Darren Cole's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His face had turned the color of chalk. Around him, the diner that once laughed at his jokes now stared at him like a stranger. The same crowd that tolerated his behavior was finally seeing him without filters. Not a local tough guy, but a coward who had just assaulted a war veteran on camera. "Dad, are the local police there yet?" the voice asked through the phone speaker. "Not yet," Elias replied, eyes locked on Darren. But the fire chief witnessed everything. Darren's hands trembled. "Wait, look, I didn't mean. This is just a misunderstanding." The words rang hollow. Everyone in the diner knew the truth. The shove, the slap, the venom in his voice. There was no misunderstanding. Only arrogance. Maria stepped closer. "Mr. Carter, I recorded the whole thing. Every second." "Thank you, Maria," Elias said softly. "Keep it safe." Within minutes, word had spread beyond Maple Ridge Diner. Customers texted relatives, reporters, and friends. Within an hour, hashtags were already forming. Hashtag Justice for Elias. Hashtag Maple Ridge Incident. At 8:25 a.m., 2 patrol cars screeched into the parking lot. Sheriff Patricia Dale stepped inside, scanning the tense faces and shattered cups. She'd known both men for years, one as a quiet, respected veteran, the other as a local headache with too much ego and too little self-control. "Morning," she said tightly. "Heard there was an incident." Maria raised her phone immediately. "You want to see this, Sheriff?" Dale watched the footage in silence, her jaw tightening with every second. Then she turned to Darren. "You have the right to remain silent." The diner gasped. It was the sound of a town's conscience waking up. Darren stumbled backward, muttering excuses. "I didn't know who he was." "That's the point," Elias said quietly. "You shouldn't have needed to." By noon, local news vans had parked outside. Reporters swarmed the entrance, microphones ready. The footage had gone viral. Thousands of views, then hundreds of thousands. A headline flashed across national news. Veteran assaulted in small-town diner. Attacker learns his son runs Homeland Security. It was no longer just a local story. It was a mirror to the nation. But behind the headlines, Havenbrook was fracturing. Some residents, ashamed, reached out with apologies. Others whispered that the town was being unfairly portrayed. The familiar divide began to form. Those who sought justice and those who preferred silence. That afternoon, Sheriff Dale faced an impossible choice. Her phone buzzed with calls from the mayor's office. "Keep it quiet, Pat," the mayor ordered. "We can't have bad publicity right before tourist season." "Mayor, it's already everywhere," she replied. "National outlets are picking it up. Then bury it in legal language. Call it a disturbance, not a hate crime." But it was too late. The footage spoke louder than politics. Meanwhile, Elias sat in his modest living room, staring at his flag pin resting on the table beside him. Maria visited after her shift, her hands still trembling. "Mr. Carter, they're saying agents are coming down from D.C. Is that true?" He nodded. Standard procedure when a federal officer's family is involved. Maria hesitated. "You okay?" Elias smiled faintly. "I've faced worse. But this time, I won't face it alone." Outside, the first black SUVs arrived. Tinted windows, crisp suits, federal credentials. Homeland Security had officially entered Havenbrook. Darren's lawyer moved fast, issuing a statement. "My client regrets the misunderstanding that occurred this morning." Emotions ran high. No harm was intended. The internet tore it apart within minutes. "No harm," one tweet read. "You slapped a 70-year-old veteran on camera." By the next morning, the video had surpassed 2 million views. Talk shows debated it. Civil rights groups released statements. Veteran organizations demanded accountability. But with the spotlight came shadows. Maria began receiving anonymous messages. "Mind your business, waitress," one read. "People who stir trouble lose jobs." Elias received midnight calls. Heavy breathing. Silence. Then a voice. "Your son can't protect you forever, old man." The harassment spread like poison. At the sheriff's station, Chief Dale slammed a stack of printed threats onto her desk. "This is getting out of control." Federal investigators arrived the next day, led by Agent Clara Ruiz, a stern woman with calm eyes and a military bearing. She'd seen hate crimes before, but rarely ones this cleanly caught on camera. Her team began collecting evidence, interviewing witnesses, and pulling phone records. What they found shocked even her. Buried in Darren's messages were conversations with other local business owners, coded language about preserving community standards and keeping Maple Ridge traditional. It wasn't random bigotry. It was organized. Within 48 hours, investigators uncovered years of patterns. Minorities refused service, false complaints filed, police reports buried. Havenbrook's pretty facade was crumbling. Elias watched the news unfold with a quiet sadness. "All I wanted was coffee," he said softly. Now it's a storm. Maria joined the growing movement for justice. Along with Fire Chief Morales and Mrs. Davenport, she formed the Unity Council, a community group demanding transparency. Their first rally drew hundreds. Candles flickered in front of the diner where it all began. Meanwhile, Darren's life spiraled. His employer suspended him. His lawyer withdrew. His name became shorthand for public shame. But the backlash came with danger. Late one night, Maria found her car keyed. The words "Go back home" scratched into the paint. Noah's college email was hacked. Elias's mailbox was smashed, his garbage scattered across the lawn. The same voices that once whispered approval were now hissing threats. Sheriff Dale knocked on Elias's door the next morning, eyes heavy. "Mr. Carter, maybe it's best if you drop the charges. For everyone's sake." Elias stared at her. Disbelief mingled with exhaustion. "For whose sake, Sheriff?" "The town's comfort. Businesses are suffering," she said. "People are scared." "People should be," Elias answered quietly. "Because for once, the truth's not hiding." When she left, his phone rang again. "Dad," Jordan's voice said firmly, "we're escalating this. Civil rights divisions involved now." "I don't want this to hurt good people," Elias sighed. "Good people don't stay silent," his son replied. "You taught me that." That night, As thunder rolled over Havenbrook, Elias sat in his dimly lit kitchen, staring at his Purple Heart. The metal gleamed faintly in the light, a reminder of battles fought long before this one. But this fight wasn't on foreign soil, it was right here at home. And for the first time in years, he wondered whether the country he defended still remembered what dignity meant. Then came the sound, the crack of glass. His living room window shattered. A rock rolled across the floor with a note attached. "Leave town, or next time, it's fire." Elias picked it up slowly. Outside, a truck engine roared away into the night. The fight wasn't over. It was only beginning. The rock on Elias Carter's floor felt heavier than stone. He set it down beside his Purple Heart and stared at the broken window, the night wind pushing cool air through the ripped curtain. Somewhere outside, a pickup engine faded into the distance, taking its laughter with it. The security team arrived first, 2 federal agents in plain clothes who swept the house room by room. Agent Clara Ruiz stood in the doorway, her voice low and steady. "We're moving you to a hotel tonight, sir. Discreet entrance, private floor. We'll install cameras here and collect fingerprints on that rock." Elias nodded. "They want me afraid. They want you quiet," Ruiz corrected. "There's a difference." By sunrise, Havenbrook was already awake to the sound of sirens. Someone had spray-painted Elias's garage door during the night. "Leave" in dripping red letters. Maria Lopez arrived with a bucket and scrub brush before the agents could react. She didn't ask permission. She just started scrubbing. "Mayor's going to say this was kids," Maria muttered, breath fogging in the cold. "He always says it's kids." "Who is the mayor these days?" one agent asked. "Grant Whitaker," Maria said, wringing the brush. "Likes ribbon cuttings. Hates controversy." Before noon, Mayor Whitaker held a press conference on the steps of City Hall, flanked by local business leaders. "Havenbrook does not tolerate vandalism," he declared, voice polished. "We support all our residents." This was likely the work of out-of-town agitators trying to divide our community. Maria watched the live stream on her phone and laughed without humor. "Out-of-town agitators? I refilled their coffee yesterday." Behind the podium, Sheriff Patricia Dale said nothing. She kept her eyes down, jaw clenched. She looked like a woman staring at 2 doors, one labeled Truth, the other labeled Career, and unsure which would be locked when she reached it. Agent Ruiz and her team began moving faster. Phone records, financials, private group chats, old incident reports. Noah Jennings provided his raw footage. Maria turned over her video files, even the ones that made her hands shake to replay. Fire Chief Rafael Morales brought a slim binder, notes he'd kept for months of incidents that didn't feel right. And then, mid-afternoon, the town servers malfunctioned. The clerk at the records office looked pale as paper. "It's the weirdest thing," she told Agent Ruiz. "We were doing routine updates, and the system just crashed. A lot of files didn't come back." Maria's phone dinged. A text from an unknown number. "Told you. This town forgets fast." "Not this time," Maria said, forwarding the text to Ruiz. That evening, Agent Ruiz knocked on Elias's hotel door with a stranger in tow, a broad-shouldered black man in a faded army cap and a grin that didn't quite hide the soldier in his eyes. "Mr. Carter," Ruiz said, "this is Marcus Ellis. Cybersecurity. Veteran." He volunteered. Marcus set a small Pelican case on the table, opened it, and pulled out a rugged laptop. "One veteran to another," he said, meeting Elias's gaze. "May I?" "Please," Elias said. Marcus plugged in, fingers dancing across keys, posture relaxed in the way of someone who could hold tension for hours. "They deleted local footage at the diner," he murmured. "Sheriff's office lost reports. Town servers glitched during maintenance." He smiled without looking up. "Amateurs." "What do you mean?" Maria asked. "Clouds sync," Marcus said. "Half the town systems mirror to off-site backups every 30 minutes. You can torch the house, but the photographs live in the attic you forgot you rented." Within an hour, Marcus had restored the Maple Ridge Diner security reels, the ones the owner swore were gone forever. Another hour, and he was scrolling through a mirror of the sheriff's complaint system, complete with timestamps that proved the deletions happened after federal agents arrived. Agent Ruiz exhaled. Chain of custody sabotage. Felony, Marcus said. And traceable. It got better and darker. Marcus pivoted to a folder synced from the town manager's drive. Community Standards Committee. Embedded spreadsheets. Email threads. Attached images. He opened one flag message, chain dated 3 days before Elias was attacked. The subject line, Phase 2, Stabilize Core Districts. Marcus clicked. Maintain expectations at traditional venues. Quiet talks with owners. Make certain customers feel out of place. Small gestures send big messages. Tourism board pleased with demographic trend lines. Cole can set the tone if needed. Reminder, no cameras. The room went still. Cole, as in Darren? Maria asked, voice tight. As in Darren, Marcus confirmed, scrolling. Beneath the email was a list of friendly businesses and city contacts, including a name that made Sheriff Dale's silence look heavier in retrospect. P. Dale, soft touch, slow roll complaints, optics friendly. Maria pressed her hands against the table to steady herself. She saw it all and did nothing. Agent Ruiz's jaw flexed. We'll give Sheriff Dale one chance to choose a door. By morning, the Unity Council had a plan. Morales called a community forum for Friday night at the Havenbrook Community Center. Live-streamed. Open mic presented evidence. They would not wait for a press release to tell their story. Mayor Whitaker called it reckless. Business leaders called it bad for the brand. Flyers went up anyway. That afternoon, another knock, this time at Maria's apartment. A woman in a dark coat, eyes shielded by oversized sunglasses. She removed them with shaking hands. I couldn't live with it, she said, voice breaking. You don't know me. I'm Claire Whitaker. Maria blinked. The mayor's wife? Claire nodded and held out a small silver USB drive. I started recording his calls months ago. At first I told myself it was just politics. Then I watched your video. I'm done lying to myself. In Maria's living room, they pressed play. Mayor Whitaker's voice filled the space, calm and clinical. Keep the narrative simple. Rowdy disturbance, both parties at fault. Remind Sheriff Dale about campaign support. Have Cole make a statement about misunderstanding. Tell the chamber we're handling it. Don't say race. Say values. Another recording. Another plan. Phase 2 needs completion. 3 closures last year stabilized property values. If we let this blow up, the investors pull out. Quiet pressure on remaining problem businesses. We cannot afford a demographic flip in the core. Maria covered her mouth. He was never confused. He was orchestrating. Agent Ruiz arrived within minutes to take custody of the drive. Ms. Whitaker, she said gently, this is brave. But it won't be easy. Claire steadied herself. I married a man who laughs at people like Mr. Carter when the cameras are off. I won't be part of it anymore. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He stood at the window of the hotel room, watching the moon float over Havenbrook's rooftops. The flag he wore on his lapel felt heavier, like duty does when it asks for more than comfort. His phone buzzed. A message from Noah Jennings. Mr. Carter, I cut a 4-minute sizzle from the footage and interviews. It's not the full doc. It's the truth. Do I post? Elias typed slowly. Post. The video, Dignity in a Cardigan, hit 250,000 views by dawn. Veterans reposted it with salutes. Teachers shared it with their classes. A choir in another state sang a hymn in tribute and tagged Elias with a thank you. The town was no longer a secret. It was a story, and then the counterpunch landed. Maria's Instagram was flooded with deep fakes, clips of her spray painting a church, her laughing at a car crash. Noah's campus email blasted a fabricated confession to staging the diner incident. Elias's hotel location was posted in a private group, along with a map. Agent Ruiz responded with surgical speed. Protective detail increased. Subpoenas flew at the platforms. Marcus built a shield around every device the Unity Council touched. They'll stop when they realize we can see them, he said. Bullies prefer the dark. Sheriff Dale asked to meet in private. She showed up at the federal command post with no entourage and hands that wouldn't keep still. I have to say something on the record, she told Ruiz. I didn't order anything deleted, but I didn't try very hard to stop it. And yes, people asked me to slow roll. I'll let myself be managed. By whom? Ruiz asked. Dale swallowed. The mayor. Certain donors. Threads run through the chamber, the tourism board, and a private chat group called Heritage Haven. I'll name names. Then do it tonight, Ruiz said. At the forum. Under oath if necessary. Dale nodded, eyes wet. I kept telling myself I was buying time. But time for what? To choose? I'm choosing now. The day of the forum arrived like a hell breath. Trucks with satellite dishes lined the curb. The community center filled until doors were propped open and folding chairs appeared from nowhere. Elias entered quietly, and the front rows rose as one. He touched his chest in thanks, the gesture humble and unassuming and somehow larger than applause. On the stage, the Unity Council sat together. Maria, Morales, Mrs. Davenport, Noah at a side table with cables and cameras, Agent Ruiz off to the wing with a clipboard, Marcus behind a laptop like a chess player one move from checkmate. Thank you for coming, Maria began, voice steady. Tonight isn't about one slap. It's about the hands behind it. The lights dimmed. The screen came alive, security footage restored by Marcus, Noah's crystal audio, timestamps, angles, faces. Darren's shove, the slap, Elias's quiet, steady voice. And then the emails, the Phase 2 memos, the euphemisms about values, the list of friendly officials with Sheriff Dale's name circled. A murmur rolled across the room like thunder at a distance. Sheriff Dale stood before it became a storm. I failed you, she said to the audience. I told myself I was protecting calm. I was protecting comfort. That's not my job. My job is to protect people. Starting now. Gasps turned into applause, then into something harder, resolve. Maria introduced the next witness. Claire Whitaker walked to the microphone under 1,000 eyes. She looked small and unshakable at once. I was complicit by silence, she said. Here's what my husband planned. She handed the USB to the moderator. On the screen, the mayor's voice filled the room, strategy polished and empathy absent. The crowd didn't shout. It didn't need to. Silence can be a verdict. Backstage, Agent Ruiz's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her face set. She handed the phone to Marcus. He scanned the message, then the server logs on his laptop. What is it? Maria whispered. Marcus looked up, eyes hard. Not a rumor. A convoy. Law enforcement. Elias asked. Some, Ruiz said, but mixed in our private security contractors tied to a regional civic foundation, one that donated to mayoral initiatives. She looked toward the doors. They're moving this way to ensure order. No declared authority. Meaning, Morales said. Meaning, Ruiz answered. Someone's trying a show of force to shut this down. Morales glanced at the fire exits, then at the crowd. And if we don't yield? Ruiz's voice was calm. Then they walk into a room full of cameras, federal agents, a penitent sheriff, and a veteran who stood taller than every one of them. She lifted her chin. But we still need to choose. Finish the presentation now, or clear the building and reconvene under protection. Marcus's laptop pinged. A new file had just hit his secure drop. He opened it, froze, and then smiled without humor. Fresh leak, he said, from an anonymous account. It's the money trail. Shell companies, payouts, contractor invoices, Mayor Whitaker, Darren Cole, and a list of Heritage Haven donors. Elias looked from the screen to the doors where heavy boots were already echoing in the hallway. Finish it, he said quietly. Let the truth walk out to meet them. The auditorium lights dimmed again as the final slide loaded. Names, dates, transfers, and the entrance doors began to open. The doors to the community center burst open with a hiss of cold air. For a single heartbeat, no one moved. Cameras swiveled. Heads turned. In the bright glare of the overhead lights, uniformed officers entered. Some local police, others in dark tactical vests marked private security. Their heavy boots echoed through the hall. Agent Clara Ruiz didn't flinch. She stepped forward, badge raised. Federal jurisdiction. Everyone remained seated. Behind her, Marcus Ellis stood ready, phone in one hand, live stream already running. You're live on every major platform, he called. Smile for the internet. That single sentence changed everything. The advancing line stopped. The crowd erupted in nervous murmurs. Nobody wanted to be the next viral face of injustice. Maria Lopez took the microphone. "You can try to silence us," she said, voice trembling but fierce. "But you're already too late. The truth is out." Every screen in the auditorium flickered. Marcus's display showed a new upload. The Havenbrook files, evidence of systematic discrimination. It was the leak he'd decrypted seconds before. Emails, bank transfers, meeting transcripts. The complete money trail tying Mayor Grant Whitaker and his associates to Darren Cole's community stabilization campaign. "Stop that feed," one officer shouted, moving toward the AV table. Elias Carter rose slowly from the front row, cane in hand, posture unbroken. "You'll have to walk through me first," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. That single line froze the room. The man they called frail now stood as the unshakable symbol of everything they'd underestimated. Outside, police sirens wailed again, this time belonging to state troopers and unmarked federal vehicles. The building was now surrounded by legitimate law enforcement. Agent Ruiz's backup had arrived. "Stand down," she ordered. "Federal warrants in play. Mayor Whitaker, Darren Cole, you are both under investigation for conspiracy, harassment, and civil rights violations." A collective gasp swept through the audience. Darren Cole, seated in the back with his lawyer, slumped like a man whose legs could no longer remember purpose. His lawyer whispered something about misunderstanding, but the microphones caught the tremor in his voice. Whitaker's face went crimson. "You have no right," Ruiz interrupted calmly. "I have 13 signed warrants and a live national audience." "Sit down, Mr. Mayor." He sat. Then came the applause. Not wild cheering, but something deeper, the slow, heavy rhythm of people realizing a weight was finally lifting. The livestream's comment counter exploded. "Historic moment. This is how you fight hate." Respect to that veteran. The world was watching Havenbrook choose who it wanted to be. When a meeting adjourned near midnight, half the town lingered outside. Cameras flashed. Reporters swarmed Maria and Elias, but neither spoke. Instead, Elias lifted his hand, signaling silence. "This is not my victory," he said softly. "It's our correction." News of the arrests hit national headlines before dawn. Federal indictments followed within days. The Heritage Haven Network, a supposedly civic coalition, unraveled under scrutiny, revealing regional funding linked to discriminatory zoning and biased lending practices. It wasn't just Havenbrook. It was half the county. As truth spread, so did backlash. Anonymous callers flooded Maria's cafe with threats. Online trolls claimed the diner video was staged. Darren Cole supporters painted him as a victim of cancel culture. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Dozens of victims, years of coordination, millions in profit. Through it all, Elias refused to hide. His calm, public appearances disarmed the hate. When a journalist asked why he stayed, he answered, "Because leaving would teach them that fear works. And I've seen too much of that in my lifetime." 3 days later, the diner where it all began reopened under new management. The sign above the door had been repainted, "Maple Ridge Diner. Everyone's welcome." Maria served coffee behind the counter again, wearing the same apron she'd worn the morning of the assault. But now her hands didn't shake. Elias entered at 7:30 sharp. Every patron stood as he walked to his usual booth. His flag pin caught the light as he sat down. Maria placed a mug in front of him without a word. "Black coffee. No sugar," she said with a grin. He smiled back. Some things shouldn't change. Outside, TV vans lined the street. Inside, life resumed with quiet dignity. By the following week, federal hearings began. Mayor Whitaker resigned after 20 years in power. Darren Cole accepted a plea deal, admitting to civil rights violations and conspiracy. Sheriff Patricia Dale cooperated fully, her testimony helping investigators uncover neighboring towns involved in similar schemes. Agent Ruiz became the face of the case's success, her firm stance inspiring federal oversight programs nationwide. But she often told reporters, "This wasn't my operation. It was one man's courage." Meanwhile, Maria's Unity Council transformed into a registered nonprofit. the Carter Foundation for Equal Dignity. Its mission to document, expose, and reform discriminatory systems across small-town America. Within months, it had volunteers in 9 states. Noah's short documentary, The Day the Diner Fell Silent, went viral, earning awards for journalism and truth in storytelling. He used the prize money to launch a web series spotlighting unsung heroes, people who stood up when silence was safer. Still, peace didn't come overnight. Hate doesn't die when exposed. It mutates. Anonymous flyers appeared around Havenbrook claiming federal overreach, trying to reignite division. But the narrative had changed. The town had seen too much truth to retreat into denial. When the first snow of winter fell, Maria organized a candlelight vigil outside the diner. The crowd sang softly, their voices rising through the cold air. Elias stood in the front, bundled in his cardigan, the flag pin gleaming against the snow. A young boy approached him shyly. "Sir," he asked, "why didn't you hit him back?" Elias looked down, eyes kind. "Because strength isn't how hard you strike. It's how firmly you stand." The boy nodded, as if memorizing it forever. News cameras caught the moment, broadcasting it nationwide. Overnight, hashtag #StandLikeElias trended across social media. Veterans, activists, and ordinary citizens shared stories of quiet resistance. Moments when dignity spoke louder than anger. But behind the calm surface, a final reckoning brewed. 3 months after the arrests, new documents surfaced, leaked from a regional contractor connected to the Heritage Haven network. They suggested deeper involvement from state-level officials and real estate developers. The same playbook: intimidation, exclusion, economic pressure. Agent Ruiz requested a follow-up task force. She called it Operation Hearthstone. Elias listened to her outline at his kitchen table, steaming mug in hand. "You're saying this wasn't just our town," he said. Ruiz nodded. "No, sir. It's a map." He leaned back slowly. "Then we don't stop here." That evening, Maria, Noah, Marcus, and Fire Chief Morales met at Elias's house. The air felt electric, fear mixed with purpose. "This isn't just Havenbrook anymore," Maria said. "We got calls from other towns. People want help, legal, technical, emotional." They saw what we did. Elias smiled faintly. "Then we'll show them how to do it." Marcus tapped the table. "Step 1, mirror the playbook. Step 2, expose it. Step 3, replace fear with visibility." Maria nodded. "Step 4, make sure everyone eats breakfast in peace again." Elias chuckled, the sound low and warm. "That's a good step 4. They sat in silence for a moment, watching snow drift past the window. The town outside was still healing, but inside that little room, something larger had been born, not a movement built on outrage, but on restoration. The truth was clear now. One act of hate had lit a nationwide awakening. Yet as Marcus packed up his laptop and Ruiz checked her messages, another alert flashed across her screen. It was from an investigative unit 2 states over. Subject line: "Another diner incident. Elderly veteran attacked." Ruiz looked up, meeting Elias's eyes. "They're asking if you'd speak to the victim." He adjusted his cardigan, stood slowly, and smiled. "Some battles choose you twice." Outside, snow crunched beneath his shoes as he stepped into the cold. The second diner was 3 towns over, in the River County where the bridges hum when trucks pass. Its sign buzzed in the dawn like a tired firefly. Harbor Cafe. By the time Elias Carter arrived with Agent Clara Ruiz and Maria Lopez, frost feathered the windows, and the smell of cinnamon rolls wrestled with the metallic bite of winter air. Inside, an elderly Latino veteran named Miguel Alvarez sat at a corner table holding his cheek. He wore a faded denim jacket and a cap with a unit patch stitched by careful hands. A young deputy hovered nearby, unsure whether to apologize or take notes. Everything about the room felt familiar to Elias: the hush, the eyes, the weight. Elias took the seat opposite Miguel and set his cane across his knees. "Tell me what happened," he said, voice gentler than the steam curling off the coffee. Miguel's wife squeezed his hand. "Same as yours," she whispered. "Same words. Same performative cruelty." Agent Ruiz spoke to local officers while Maria, quietly moved behind the counter, asking the stunned cook for a towel and ice. When she returned, she dabbed Miguel's cheek with care that said, "I've been here before." The manager appeared, nervous, flanked by a man in a sport coat with the kind of smile that's trained to dissolve consequences. "We don't want trouble," the man began. Elias glanced up. "Neither do we," he said. "But we brought truth." By noon, the pattern had unfolded again. Private chat groups, heritage committees, soft pressure tactics dressed in polite language. Marcus Ellis, plugged into every socket like a battlefield medic, mapped the same architecture of exclusion with a few keystrokes. Each discovery felt less like coincidence and more like a printed manual of how to shrink a town until it fit inside someone's fear. They called it Operation Hearthstone because a hearth is where a home tells the truth. One by one, neighboring communities stepped forward. Diner owners who refused quiet bribes, pastors who've been urged to preach unity without specifics, teachers asked to remind certain parents about dress codes. The web tightened, the light widened. Back in Havenbrook, accountability became ordinary in a way that surprised everyone. The council meetings shifted from shouting matches to working sessions. Fire Chief Rafael Morales led a task force on bias training for first responders. Sheriff Patricia Dale, rusty but resolute, invited external auditors to grade her department in public. She didn't pass every category. She published the failures anyway. Mayor Grant Whitaker pled guilty to conspiracy and civil rights violations. At sentencing, he tried to apologize to the town he had reshaped like wet clay. Claire Whitaker, seated with Maria, stared forward without blinking. The judge's gavel came down not as revenge, but as a restoration. Years in prison, restitution to businesses quietly bled, and a court-ordered educational series on the modern mechanics of discrimination. For once, the curriculum would be honest. Elias didn't attend the sentencing. He spent that morning at Maple Ridge Diner, where the new owner, a Ghanaian immigrant named Kwesi Mensah, experimented with jollof and eggs on the breakfast menu. "If a town can hold two truths," Kwesi said, smiling, "it can hold two spices." The line for Table 6, Elias's booth, became a local joke. People took turns buying his coffee. He took turns listening to their stories. Noah Jennings' full documentary premiered online on a wet Sunday afternoon. The servers groaned under the traffic as the title card appeared, "Stand like Elias." There were no booming narrations, just room tone, shoe squeaks, distant traffic, life happening while justice learns to speak. The film cut from a slap to the candlelight vigil, from spreadsheets to a child asking why strength can be quiet. When the credits rolled, the chat was a flood of gratitude and confessions. "My dad left the VFW because of this stuff. I'm a waitress. This is real. I'm sorry I kept my head down." Some nights, ugliness tried to sneak back in. Anonymous flyers, dog whistles on talk radio, a rumor that Homeland Security planted the emails. Yet the rumors kept dying in the same way, in rooms where neighbors had learned to look one another in the eye. You cannot gaslight a community that practices telling each other the truth. Spring arrived with the thin green of second chances. The Unity Council rebranded as the Hearthstone Network, a coalition of small towns committed to structural repair, not just apologies. They published free toolkits, how to preserve camera evidence, how to mirror public records to independent archives, how to set up anonymous hotlines that don't loop back to the problem. Churches hosted potlucks that were less about casseroles and more about covenant. Elias resisted every attempt to turn him into marble. When a national morning show offered to fly him to New York, he declined. "All due respect," he said, "diners open at 7:30. Instead, he recorded a simple message from his booth, the clink of flatware in the background. "If you're tired, that's normal. If you're scared, that's honest. Sit together anyway." He did travel once, back to Harbor Cafe, when Miguel Alvarez invited him to speak at a town forum. Miguel stood beside him, cheek healed, pride unbroken. "We almost moved," Miguel admitted into the microphone. "Then we realized the bullies move too. They move on to the next quiet person. So we decided to be loud." The crowd laughed, then cheered, then lined up to shake their hands as if dignity were contagious. Maybe it is. A month later, a letter arrived addressed in careful cursive. No return address. Inside was a short note and a photograph of a teenager in a junior ROTC uniform. Mr. Carter, I saw you didn't hit back. My dad told me that was weak. I thought about it and decided he was wrong. I'm signing up to be the kind of man who keeps people safe without making them small. I hope that's okay with you. T. Elias folded the letter, slid it into his wallet behind the Purple Heart citation, and said a quiet prayer for a boy he would never meet. The elections came like a weather change, first a breeze, then a front. Havenbrook chose Maria Lopez as mayor in a landslide. She took her oath in the community center under lights, still warm from hard nights. Policy is how a town apologizes with its hands, she said, and then signed the first 3 ordinances. Open data by default, a civilian review board with subpoena power, and a grant program for businesses harmed by discriminatory practices. It was less a victory lap than a daily rout. Sheriff Dale won re-election not because she was flawless, but because she was faithful. She let auditors grade her again. She passed more categories. She published the failures anyway. On a bright Saturday, the first Havenbrook Festival of Belonging took over Main Street. Food tents and swing bands, and kids chalking hopscotch boxes straight across the old invisible borders. Quasey's Jollof Bowls sold out before noon. A retired judge judged the pie contest. A tattooed mechanic won with something that shouldn't have worked and did. Near the gazebo, a small stage hosted 5-minute talks. A librarian spoke about banned books and found voices. A carpenter read a poem about repairing beams you didn't break. Then the MC asked Elias to close. He took the steps slowly, not for effect, but because 72 years deserve honesty. The crowd fell quiet. I used to think dignity was an armor, he said. Turns out it's a table. He smiled toward the diner owner, the fire chief, the sheriff, the kid with chalk-dusted knees. Armor keeps you alive. A table keeps you human. You don't want a town back by swinging. You set a table and keep adding chairs, even when your hands shake. A breeze moved the bunting. Somewhere a horn line tested its notes. Elias's voice softened. The slap was just the spark. The real story is everything you built so no one has to stand alone again. He stepped back to applause that felt less like thunder and more like rain on a thirsty field. That evening, as sunset glazed the storefront's gold, Agent Ruiz stopped by Maple Ridge for a coffee. She slid into Elias's booth and set a slim folder on the table. Final update, she said. Operation Hearthstone is expanding statewide. DOJ's creating a pilot program from our playbook. Morales is on the advisory board. Maria's policy kit is being adopted in 13 towns. She hesitated. There's one more thing. Elias raised an eyebrow. My team's been asked to brief freshman agents next quarter. They want a case study anchor. They asked me what to call it. She smiled. I told them, the Carter Standard. Elias stared at his coffee. I'm one person, he said quietly. That's the point, Ruiz replied. They sat in the comfortable hush of clinking plates and low conversation. Outside, children chased bubbles down the sidewalk like small, luminous planets. Inside, a town remembered how to be itself without shrinking anybody else. The bell over the door chimed. Darren Cole walked in. Conversations paused, but no one stood. He had no entourage, no lawyer, no swagger. Just a man in a plain jacket, turning a cap in his hands. He approached the counter and waited until Maria saw him. I'm not here to make a scene, he said, voice rough. I'm here to ask if I can pay for Mr. Carter's coffee, and then I'll see myself out. Maria studied him for a long heartbeat, then nodded. You can pay, and you can listen. She poured another cup and carried it to Elias. On the house, she murmured, by way of someone learning. Elias lifted the mug, then set it down untouched. He turned in the booth to face Darren. You don't owe me coffee, he said. You owe this town the work. Darren swallowed. I know. Then show up. Not for a week, for a year. Nail a board. Carry a box. Take notes. Keep your mouth soft. When no one's recording you, be the same man. Darren nodded, eyes wet, and left as quietly as he'd come. The bell chimed once. Conversations resumed. Not triumphant, just steady. That's what healing sounds like when it takes. Later, as the sky bruised into evening, Elias stood to go. Maria caught his sleeve. "You never did hit him," she said, a smile playing at the edge. "I think that broke more bones than a punch would have." Elias chuckled. "I didn't come here to break anything." He straightened his cardigan and touched the little flag that had followed him from battlefields to breakfast tables. "I came here to build." He stepped into the amber light, the door swinging shut behind him, the bell chiming once more, clear, simple, true. And for the first time in a long time, Havenbrook felt like a town no bully could make small. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more thrilling, cinematic stories just like this one. Here's a question for you. Where have you seen quiet dignity change the outcome in your own life or community? Share a moment when someone chose restraint over retaliation and what it built afterward. And don't forget, justice isn't loud by nature. It becomes loud when enough ordinary people decide to practice it together.